In the vibrant heart of Atlanta, where the city hums with the energy of ambition, lies a place that bridges dreams and reality, a high-end restaurant that caters to everyone, from eager young professionals to seasoned business moguls. It's the kind of place where deals are made over cocktails, where laughter and clinking glasses echo through the night, and where the most unexpected stories unfold. On a typical Friday evening, the restaurant was alive with its usual bustle. Tables were packed, waitstaff moved gracefully through the maze of customers, and the air buzzed with conversations about everything from sports to stock markets. But amidst the noise, something extraordinary was about to happen, something that would leave everyone who witnessed it forever changed. At the center of this story is Nia, a young, black waitress whose warm smile could brighten even the dimmest corner of the room. She wasn't just there to serve meals. Nia carried herself with a quiet determination, a spark in her eyes that hinted at unspoken dreams. To the diners, she might have seemed like any other server. But for Nia, this job wasn't just work. It was a stepping stone to something greater. And tonight, her resolve would be put to the ultimate test. Enter Mr. Harrison, a man whose presence alone demanded attention. Dressed sharply, with an aura of wealth that turned heads, he strolled in with the confidence of someone used to having the upper hand. Known for his blunt attitude and love for the spotlight, Mr. Harrison wasn't the kind to let a moment pass without making an impression. As fate would have it, their paths crossed that evening. A simple exchange, one that could have ended like any other, quickly turned into a challenge that would test Nia in ways she never imagined. And as the room watched in silence, the question lingered: what happens when someone with everything underestimates someone with nothing to lose? Stay with me, because this is the story of how a young woman's brilliance and courage silenced a room and taught us all a lesson about the power of resilience, intelligence, and the human spirit. Nia had always been a source of light in the restaurant. Her warm smile and calm demeanor turned even the busiest shifts into moments of connection. She wasn't just delivering plates. She brought a sense of care to every table she served. Beneath her humble uniform, however, was a sharp mind, one shaped by countless hours of study, self-reflection, and a dream she quietly nurtured, a dream of owning her own business someday. That evening, Nia moved gracefully between tables, her words kind and thoughtful, her energy lifting spirits as she went. At one table, she paused briefly, offering a heartfelt piece of advice to a young professional who seemed weighed down by worry. Her words were simple, but they carried wisdom. The key to success isn't perfection, it's consistency. Small steps every day will take you farther than giant leaps once in a while. As the young professional nodded in appreciation, someone else was listening. From across the room, Mr. Harrison watched the exchange with a smirk. A man of wealth and influence, he was used to commanding attention, whether through his sharp attire, booming voice, or cutting remarks. Tonight, he arrived with an air of arrogance, his every move deliberate, his presence impossible to ignore. Mr. Harrison's sharp eyes caught Nia's interaction, and his amusement quickly turned to mockery. To him, a waitress speaking of success was laughable. He leaned back in his chair, gesturing toward her as if to call attention to the room. And then, with a tone dripping in condescension, he spoke, "If you're so wise, why don't you show us all? Why don't you give us a business talk right here, right now?" For a moment, the restaurant seemed to pause, the lively hum replaced by a sudden silence. All eyes turned to Nia, who stood frozen for a heartbeat. The challenge wasn't just meant to mock her. It was an attempt to belittle her, to expose her as nothing more than what he presumed her to be, a waitress with no business speaking about success. But what Mr. Harrison didn't realize was that Nia had faced challenges before, and this one, though unexpected, would prove to be her moment. As whispers rippled through the room, Nia took a deep breath, her heart pounding but her spirit steady. This wasn't just a challenge, it was a chance. And as the weight of the moment settled, her decision became clear. She would rise to it. Nia stood there frozen for a moment as the restaurant held its collective breath. Every eye was on her, and the weight of the challenge felt immense. The quiet hum of the room had been replaced with an expectant silence. Mr. Harrison's smirk lingered, as if he'd already won, as if he was sure she would falter. But something stirred within her, a quiet strength that refused to be silenced. Her mind raced. For a split second, she considered retreating, brushing off the challenge and walking away. After all, who would blame her? She was just a waitress, right? That's what they all thought. But then, a flicker of a memory surfaced, a flashback to nights. Spent scribbling ideas in her worn notebook, dreaming of a future where she wasn't just serving food, but serving a vision, a purpose. She remembered her mother's words, spoken during one of those long nights. Your dreams are valid. No matter where you start, never let anyone tell you that you're less than what you are capable of becoming. Those words echoed now, louder than the doubt, stronger than the fear. As Nia looked around, she saw faces filled with curiosity, some with quiet encouragement, others with skepticism. And then her eyes locked with a young girl at the back of the restaurant, watching her with wide, hopeful eyes. That was the moment she knew. This wasn't just about her. It was about proving something bigger, that no one's worth could be defined by their circumstances or their job title. Nia took a deep breath, her hands trembling slightly, but her resolve steadying with each passing second. She stepped forward, her voice soft but unwavering as she spoke. "All right, Mr. Harrison," she said, meeting his gaze directly. "You want a business talk? Let's have one." A collective gasp rippled through the room, followed by a hush so deep it felt like the walls were listening too. For a brief moment, Mr. Harrison's confidence wavered, but he quickly masked it with an exaggerated gesture, waving his hand as if inviting her to proceed. The smirk remained, but Nia could see the glimmer of surprise in his eyes. She had already done something he didn't expect. She had accepted the challenge. The room seemed to shift, the air thick with anticipation. Nia's heart pounded, but she didn't let it show. She straightened her posture, exuding a quiet confidence that hadn't been there moments before. The people around her weren't just watching, they were waiting, hoping, wondering what she would say. And Nia, standing there under the bright lights of the restaurant, knew one thing for sure: she wasn't about to let them down. She cleared her throat, took another steadying breath, and prepared to speak. What happened next would be remembered by everyone in that room. But no one, not even Mr. Harrison, could have predicted how it would unfold. What she did next shocked everyone. Nia stood tall, a quiet confidence radiating from her as she began to speak. The room, now filled with a mix of curiosity and intrigue, was utterly silent. She glanced at Mr. Harrison, whose smirk had softened into something unreadable. Then in a calm, steady voice she started. "Success," she said, "isn't about the money in your bank account. It's about the value you bring, value to your customers, to your team, and to the world around you." Her voice was steady, but her words carried weight, drawing the attention of even the most skeptical faces in the room. "Take customer service, for example," she continued. "It's not just about taking orders or serving food. It's about understanding people, meeting their needs, and building connections. Whether you're selling coffee or closing million-dollar deals, the principles are the same. People remember how you made them feel, not just what you sold to them." Nia paused for a moment, letting the message sink in. Her eyes swept across the room, meeting faces that now seemed more engaged, even inspired. She continued with a spark of passion lighting her tone. "Here's the thing about leadership," she said. "It's not about barking orders or showing off your authority. True leadership is about humility. It's about listening, learning, and being willing to serve alongside your team." She shared an example from her own life, a story about a time when the restaurant had a rush. Then she worked shoulder to shoulder with the cooks and bussers, ensuring everything ran smoothly. "That night, we didn't just serve food," she said. "We created an experience. And that's what business is about, creating value, no matter what role you play." Her voice gained momentum as she began to weave in real-world analogies, each one simple yet striking. "Think of a car," she said. "The driver might get all the credit, but it's the engine, the tires, and every small component working together that gets you to your destination. A business is no different. Every role matters, and every person contributes to the bigger picture." Nods started spreading through the room, even from Mr. Harrison's table. The once dismissive gazes had softened, replaced with genuine interest, and then Nia dropped a line that struck a chord with everyone listening. "You don't need a title to be great," she said. "Greatness comes from how you treat others, the passion you put into your work, and the integrity you carry every day." The words hung in the air, resonating deeply. Even Mr. Harrison leaned forward slightly, his expression now serious, his smirk long gone. It was clear that Nia had done something remarkable. She had shifted the energy of the entire room. She ended with a powerful thought, her voice steady and full of conviction. "Wealth, status, titles, they're temporary, but the legacy you build through your actions and your values, that's what lasts. So if you want to succeed, start by bringing value. Start by being kind, and start by never underestimating the power of humility." As she finished, the room erupted in applause. Not the polite kind, but the heartfelt kind that comes from being truly moved. Nia had not just spoken, she had connected, taught, and inspired. And in that moment, something remarkable had happened. The waitress they had underestimated had risen to a challenge and proven that wisdom and value can come from anywhere. But what happened next would leave an even greater mark. As the room filled with applause, Mr. Harrison sat frozen, his hands resting on the edge of the table. His trademark smirk was nowhere to be seen. Instead, his expression was a mixture of disbelief and quiet admiration. For a man who had built his life on sharp instincts and quick judgments, this moment struck differently. He had come to the restaurant expecting to enjoy a meal, but instead he had been served a lesson, one he didn't see coming. Nia's words echoed in his mind, peeling back layers of assumptions he hadn't realized he was carrying. Her talk wasn't just a defense of herself. It was a challenge to everyone in the room, himself included. Mr. Harrison's eyes softened as he glanced at Nia, who stood still, slightly breathless but resolute. She wasn't basking in the applause or seeking approval. She simply stood, embodying the message she had just delivered. For the first time in a long while, Mr. Harrison felt humbled. The applause died down, and an expectant silence filled the room. Mr. Harrison rose slowly, his movements deliberate. All eyes shifted to him. He adjusted his jacket and cleared his throat, but no one could predict what he was about to say. "Nia," he began, his voice steady but unusually warm, "I'll admit something to you and to everyone here. When I first walked in tonight, I thought I understood everything about business, about success, and about people. But listening to you just now, I realized how wrong I was." A murmur rippled through the room. Mr. Harrison raised a hand, and the murmurs subsided. "You reminded me," he continued, "that wisdom doesn't come from titles or net worth. It comes from experience, from values, and from the courage to stand up for what you believe in. You've shown all of us that tonight." He turned slightly toward the room, addressing the crowd. "I've sat in boardrooms with CEOs and decision-makers from all over the world, but I've rarely heard anyone speak as passionately and authentically as Nia just did. That's something money can't buy. That's what true leadership looks like." Then turning back to Nia, he smiled, not the confident smile of a man used to winning, but a genuine, respectful one. "I underestimated you," he admitted. "You're remarkable. And if you ever need a mentor or a partner to help you reach your dreams, you have my number." Nia blinked, surprised, but she didn't falter. Instead, she smiled back, her confidence unwavering. The room erupted into cheers once again, but this time, the energy was different. It wasn't just about her standing up for herself. It was about the transformation of a man who had started the evening as a skeptic and ended it as an admirer. From that moment, something shifted, not just for Mr. Harrison, but for everyone in the restaurant. Nia's courage and wisdom had created ripples that reached farther than she could have imagined. For Mr. Harrison, it wasn't just a dinner, it was a turning point, a reminder that no matter how high you climb, there's always something to learn, often from the most unexpected places. But what Mr. Harrison did next would take Nia's journey to an entirely new level. The night had settled, and the city outside buzzed faintly, a world in motion, unaware of the transformation that had taken place in a small, lively restaurant. Nia sat on the worn couch in her modest apartment, her thoughts swirling with everything that had unfolded just hours before. She glanced at the notebook, resting on her coffee table, the same notebook, where she had sketched out her dreams of starting her own business. Tonight, those dreams felt closer than ever. In the quiet of her home, she replayed Mr. Harrison's words in her mind. "You're remarkable." It wasn't just the compliment that lingered, it was the validation. For years, she had doubted whether her voice mattered in rooms filled with louder, wealthier, or more experienced people. But tonight, she had proven something to herself. Courage wasn't about being fearless. It was about speaking up despite the fear. Meanwhile, across the city, Mr. Harrison sat in his study, scrolling through his phone. The evening had left an indelible mark on him. He opened his social media app, his mind still stirred by Nia's words. For a man accustomed to showcasing his own achievements, tonight felt different. He began typing, his fingers moving deliberately across the screen. "Tonight I met someone extraordinary," he wrote. "In a world obsessed with resumes and titles, Nia reminded me that true greatness lies in passion, humility, and the courage to stand for what you believe in. We all have something to learn, and tonight I learned from her." He hit post, unaware of the ripple effect that would soon follow. Within hours, his message gained traction. Likes turned into shares, and comments poured in from people, inspired by his newfound humility and by Nia's story. As the post went viral, Nia's name and story reached places she had never imagined. The next morning, her phone buzzed incessantly. Messages flooded her inbox, words of encouragement, offers of mentorship, and inquiries from investors intrigued by her vision. One stood out, an email from a foundation offering seed funding for young entrepreneurs. They wanted to meet her, and they wanted to help. For Nia, it was surreal. The girl who had spent years doubting herself now found herself at the center of an opportunity she had only dreamed of. But what stood out most was the realization that this wasn't just about her business. It was about the courage it took to speak, to believe in herself, and to act, even when the odds were stacked against her. And for Mr. Harrison, the experience left him changed in ways he hadn't expected. That night, he didn't just applaud Nia. He began rethinking the way he approached success and leadership. The man who once prided himself on his influence now found himself using it to lift others, starting with a single post that had become a beacon of inspiration. In a single night, Nia had changed more than one man's perspective. She had started a ripple effect, proving that courage and determination can create opportunities far beyond what we can imagine. It was a reminder to everyone watching, listening, and reading her story. Greatness isn't defined by titles or wealth, but by the strength to take a stand, the wisdom to speak with purpose, and the belief that even the smallest voice can make a difference. But this was just the beginning of Nia's journey. What lay ahead was a path shaped not by chance, but by the choices she made that night. Choices that would inspire a generation. And as the world began to take notice, Nia realized that her story was no longer just her own. It was a story of courage that belonged to everyone, willing to rise above doubt and chase their dreams. How often do we find ourselves dismissing the potential of someone else, or worse, our own? Nia's journey began as a quiet pursuit of her dreams, shadowed by doubt and the fear of being unheard. But it blossomed into something extraordinary, touching lives in ways she could never have imagined. Her story is not just hers, it's a mirror reflecting the struggles and aspirations of so many. How many Nias walk among us, brimming with untapped potential, held back only by the weight of judgment, whether from others or themselves. How often do we fail to recognize the courage it takes to rise above circumstances and the power of believing in one's worth. As we close this chapter, imagine for a moment the ripple effect that courage can create. Picture the aspiring artist afraid to showcase their work, the entrepreneur hesitant to pitch their idea, the student doubting their ability to succeed. Nia's story serves as a reminder that change begins the moment we step forward, despite the fear, and dare to believe in what we have to offer. And then, think of Mr. Harrison, a man who learned that the greatest leaders are those who listen, those who uplift, and those who are humble enough to learn from anyone, no matter their background. His transformation reminds us that every perspective matters, and every person has a story worth hearing. Look around you. In your community, your workplace, or even your own family, there are countless untold stories of resilience, of dreams waiting to be realized. And maybe, just maybe, one of those stories is yours. The truth is, greatness doesn't come from titles or accolades. It comes from the willingness to stand up, speak out, and believe in the value you bring to the world. Whether you're on the brink of a breakthrough or just starting to find your way, remember this: you matter. Your voice matters. Your dreams matter. If Nia's story has touched you, let it be more than just a tale. It can be the spark that ignites your next step. Believe in your potential, share your ideas, and most importantly, never underestimate what you're capable of achieving. If this story inspired you, take a moment to reflect on someone in your life who could use this message. Maybe it's a friend, a colleague, or even a stranger. Share this story with them, because sometimes a little inspiration is all it takes to change a life. And if you're ready for more stories that remind us of the power of resilience, courage, and hope, hit the like button, subscribe to our channel, and stay with us. Together, we'll continue uncovering the extraordinary hidden in the everyday. Because in the end, that's what this is all about. Finding the greatness in each of us and lifting each other higher.